everyone. Hello. Welcome to another Long Man Tarot Live. I'm a little bit late going on. Apologies. I was purchasing some crystals online and I didn't realise it was the time. Anyway, thank you for coming. Let's see who's here today. We've got Joe, first one in. Hello to you, morning. Hello to you, Joe. I was going to say that. Hello, Ellie. Lovely to see you here. Kristen. Hi, Kristen. I hope you're doing okay. Isabel, hello to you. Blue Sapphire. Have I been on half term this week? No, it was last week. So I've been back to work this week. It's been anything far from relaxing, but it's Friday and I'm with you lovely people, and that's okay. It's the tonic that I need. But thank you very much. Yeah, keeping my fans right. I just saw a lovely little bit of fluorite that just had to be bought. So that's the problem. So apologies if everyone's been waiting for hours, but it was fluorite. So yeah, Basil's here. Can you see? He's been here a long time. He's here to move. And Sybil is in the chair there as well. So both the cats are here tonight. Yeah. More crystals. I'm sure it wasn't that long ago you weren't getting any more. Yeah. No, I've been really good. I have to be honest, because I'm trying to be very, very good. So I bought some a month ago from an online auction, which I've just been on. And I've only just spent £3 on some fluorite. So yes, you're right. I have purchased, but it was just £3 and it was rather gorgeous. So hello to you, Chris. Mr. Chris, I hope you're doing well. Yeah, so that's what I've been up to. So it's been a very, very busy week. I hope you're all very well. I've got a little candle going up there tonight, blue candle and yellow daffodils, so with the colours of Ukraine there. So I thought we'd have that burning tonight, because we're going to be looking at the Mythic Tarot, and we're going to look at some of the Greek myths around it and my relationship with the Mythic Tarot. And I'm going to tell you kind of how it all began and what it was like reinvesting it all again. So that's what we're going to talk about in a moment. So hi, Beth. Oh, yeah, Beth says I'm feeling very anxious and sad. I'm sure I'm not the only one, so I'm happy to be here with you. I think we're all feeling very much the same with the news. Yeah, so hopefully tonight take our minds off it a bit, but we'll still honour what's going on. Yeah, it's very difficult, isn't it? Oh, Chris says he loves a bit of Greek mythology. I'm going to make a cup and settle in for this. Oh, good. Absolutely. I was up my collar though. Yeah, I was really, well, I'll tell you all about it in a moment once we get going, but I love a good Greek myth. So that's the reason that I bought this deck quite early on. So if you've got any questions, or I quickly go through the cards and you'd like to stop and see them a bit slower, or there's something else you'd like to look at, let me know. Put it in capitals if you've got any questions. We'll have a lovely chat about it. I am by no way an expert on Greek myths, but I used to read them as a kid. So I've been around for many years, and I think I know my way around the Greek myths. So hopefully I won't bore you too senseless with it tonight. That's not the plan. So, yeah, so let's have a little look at the decks. So the first thing I'm going to do is just switch over to this camera. Now, you'll notice, firstly, it doesn't have a tuck box. And that's because this is one of the oldest decks in my collection. It's not a first edition of the Mythic Tarot. It is from 1991, I think I bought that. I've lost the box, and I've lost I don't even remember if it came with a booklet or anything. So what I do is I just tie a ribbon around it that I was given. I think it's a ribbon from our wedding, Peter and our wedding. I can't remember what we used for. So yeah, so that's how I keep it like that. So yeah, this is going to be about the Mythic Tarot, which I'm sure you've all seen in its beauty. So let's talk a little bit about the history of it first. It's a deck that was made by Juliet Sharman-Burke and Liz Green and the illustrators Trisha Newell. And this version, as you can see, hopefully you can read it, was first published in 1989 in the UK. This is a 1990 reprint of it. And I think it was 1990, 1991. It came in a tuck box, I think. It didn't come with anything else because in those days you bought the book separately. So the Mythic Tarot book, which I never bought, and I'll talk a little bit about that a bit more. It's really flimsy cardstock by modern standards. I mean, look at it, it's like paper. So that's the story of it. So this is quite rare to get now. You will find these older editions on eBay. I'm not quite sure how much they would go for, but to celebrate sort of 20 years of the deck, it was reissued in 2009 with a different artist, a man called Giovanni Caselli, who redid all the images. He kept the actual poses and the designs of them, but he just redrew them in his own style. And that's freely available. So if you haven't got that, have a good look at it. That's the new Mythic Tarot. And yeah, that was 2009. And that's really, I don't have that one. And I kind of think that I should have this because it is gorgeous. But I have got the original and it means a lot to me, that one there. So Joe says, I haven't actually seen this deck before. Oh, wow. Hopefully you'll like it, Joe. Hi, Ren. Hopefully you can chat at this time. Oh, that's really good. Just catching up with some people. How lovely to have so many people here. I want to know what you think about the Order of the Majors. It's the same in this deck and in the Sharman Caselli. Yeah. When we get to it, remind me, Chris, when we get to it. If I forget it, let me know and we'll talk about it. Hi, Ren. Yeah, everyone's saying hello to Ren. Hi, Kaz. 1989 was my first ever deck. No idea what happened to it. Well, this was my first deck. I'm going to tell you the story of what it means to me in a moment once I've gone through everyone. But, okay, it's not the one I had that says Ren, but I do have a vintage copy of it. I think most people have seen these decks. And if you haven't, like I said, you're going to be in for a treat. They go for all sorts of prices on here. So the story of my life with this deck, I, as you know, got into tarot about the age of 15. And I bought the Swiss and I bought something else that wasn't RWS based. And because as I said earlier, I've always loved Greek myths and always told them as a child and had lots of books on them. When I saw this deck, I thought I have to buy it. Now, this is going back, as I said, 1990. The internet wasn't around. If those people recall those days, you would go into a esoteric or mysterious shop or whatever it was called. I bought this deck in Brighton. The shop doesn't exist anymore. And they would have the tarot behind lockable glass doors, but they had a big photo album of samples of cards, and you would thumb your way through these very well thumbed photo albums to kind of see what the cards were like. So you only ever saw between 4 and 8 cards, and you had to kind of make your choice up from that. And so I bought this deck because I love Greek myths, and I thought that's be really, really cool. So you buy it almost blind, in the fact that I hadn't seen the rest of it all there. And that was how I kind of had a love-hate relationship with this deck. The reason I had a love-hate relationship with it, I took this to university. This was my deck that I took away for 3 years from home. This one and the Sacred Rose, which is my first love deck that I absolutely adore. But this is the deck that I used at university, and this brings back so many happy memories of just looking at the images and touching the cards, of, you know, being a first-year student, sitting in my halls of residence, grotty halls of residence, probably on a beanbag or a cushion, cigarette in one hand, can of lager in the other, reading the tarot for whoever wanted to come along. And I did lots of readings with this deck. Now, because I didn't have the book with it, I really worked intuitively off it, particularly drawing on what I knew about the myths and legends. So actually, although the images in here may not have been what I was particularly looking for, it has really taught me a lesson on how to read the tarot. So I'm going to show you the cards. We're going to talk them through bit by bit. Ren says, mine came in a big box with a book and a cloth. Yeah, and the Celtic cross printed. That reminds me, yes, it did come with that card. I still got that card somewhere. I put it in another wooden tarot box. Thank you for reminding me about that. This just came in a pack, though. No book, no cloth, no bag. It was just that one. Kaz says, actually, it was 87, bought the kit through Doubleday Book Club. Teenage friend. Wow, some of us are really going back, aren't we, to the memories, having some lovely memories of this. This is fantastic. I love hearing these stories. All about the same time we were discovering it. So, yeah, so this was my deck. It's the first deck that I had that was RWS based, and it is RWS based. And this kind of awoke a kind of, I'm going to say interest, perhaps a thought about tarot decks that kind of use myths, legends, stories, and then kind of shoehorn stuff in. And I hope you kind of understand what I mean about that one, is that I'm very against something like a Shakespeare tarot, possibly, where sometimes you might get a magician card that's only Prospero because he's the only magician really in a Shakespeare story. But what the creators of this deck have done is they've done a fantastic job of matching up, particularly with the major arcana, the gods or the myths or the characters in Greek mythology with the traditional meanings of the RWS. So let's explore it a little bit. Barnes and Noble, says Ray. I think it was a shop in Brighton I got this one from. I remember there was an awful lot of incense burning at the time, and they had bright blue shelves with glitter on it. It was fantastic. Okay, hopefully you can see this okay. Ren says this deck actually made it a little difficult for me to learn. That's really interesting. I'd like to know why. I know might not want to type a long thing in there. I kind of had a bit of that with it, and I'll talk a bit as we go, Ren. Perhaps that may make a bit of sense to you, but please feel free to share if you'd like to on that one there. I'm just going to put my banner up so we know. So this, just if people are coming in now, this is the original Mythic Tarot. If you went on Amazon or a website nowadays, you'd probably find the new Mythic Tarot, the redrawn one by Caselli, but you can still get the original ones here. Pricey, says Beth. Yeah, I don't know how much this would go for now. You can see how chipped and loved it is. Let's have a little look at the backs while we're here. So you can see, I mean, that is one way it fills me with absolute horror, but absolute love the fact that it's so used, it's so chipped. There's even, you know, bits I almost bent up, and yeah, and that's for me is what a tarot deck should feel. This has been used, this has been loved, this has, you know, it's been through it all. I think actually 1 year I was asked to do tarot readings at a university ball, and they paid me to sit in a tent, and I think I used this deck to read for very drunken third-year students, I think it was. So lots of happy memories coming through. So these are the backs here. As you can see, it's only one web. It looks quite glossy on here. I think it's probably dirt or grease that's made it a bit more glossy than it is, sorry. But it's a really plain but really lovely back to this one there. And as I said, the cardstock is super thin. I have no idea, but it's just practically stiff paper, this one. We've got the pentacle, the sword, the wand, and the chalice cup there. And this lovely border, really simple, and I don't know what the new one looks like, and I'm assuming they haven't changed it too much. So let's start off. I'm just going to do the majors first. If anyone wants to chip in, add your comments. I'll try and do it as I can. Awful card stock, says Ren. Oh, it goes for almost 500 Australian dollars, says Kaz. Wow. Is that for pristine? I would imagine still in box. I don't think I'd get it for this, but okay, so we're just going to do the majors first. So here's the Fool. So this is Dionysus, and as you can see, he's in a typical Fool pose, but we don't have all the other trappings that you'd get with the RWS, and that's what I like about this deck. Is there's hints, there's sort of looks, nudges towards the RWS. We've got the cliff, and that's about it. But it's no denying that it's the Fool. Now, why this is Dionysus, I'm not actually sure. And this was probably my first shock when I opened the deck up and looked at it, is that we've got a very young Dionysus. Now, Dionysus is the god of wine and fruitfulness and partying and all those sort of lovely Greek kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Fun activities. And he's often shown as a bit of a fat man, or often fat, older, drunk man. So it was quite interesting to have a really young Dionysus here. You can really see from here what the artwork's like. Some of these pictures in the cards are really lovely, and others leave me really cold because of the way they've been drawn. They're also quite flat, the images. Although there's an awful lot of colour, it seems very flat, very two-dimensional. I'm not actually sure what the art medium would have been done in. I don't think it's watercolour. It looks like a gouache. It looks like it's got something a little bit more to it. But back in 1990, 1989, when these come out, this would have been copied from the original. So I don't think there would have been very much computer extras going on, layers and bits added to it. I'm sure there is now, but these are pretty much just copies of the original artwork there. Ren's getting her cocoa. Dionysus was carefree and took risks. Absolutely, Beth. That's a really good way of thinking about that one there. Just a bit of a strange one, perhaps, to start the deck with. That's all. He needs a wine bottle in his left hand. I like that. We have got this eagle up here. And the eagle is often the sign of Zeus. So, yeah, but as well, we've got these backgrounds. The backgrounds here are amazing, and you can just see the sun is just coming up there as well. The ground looks quite arid, and actually, if you compare that to the Rider-Waite-Smith original one, although we've got hills and mountains and a cliff path there, the cliff looks like, there's grass and bits growing off it. Well, this looks like a really arid, dry land here. So Chris is associated with rebirth too, wasn't he? Yeah. Doesn't Dionysus mean twice born? I think you're right. I think you are absolutely right. In fact, actually, before we get into it, I was just going to plug a couple of books that if you're really interested and want like a bit of light reading to do with the Greek myths, I really recommend this series. This is Stephen Fry. He's written 3 books. The first one is Mythos, which is about the start of the Greek myths, and if you like, the pantheon of the gods of Olympus and all that one there. Really short chapters, really lightly done. There's some really nice extra footnotes with most of the bits there, giving you some really useful pieces of advice. I took this on holiday. It was a perfect holiday read. So that's the first book, Mythos. Then Stephen Fry, you may recognise him from UK Telly. He's an actor and presenter on that. He's very knowledgeable. He then went on to write a second one, which is Heroes, which are, as it suggests, about the mortals. So that's your Jason and the Argonauts, your Perseus, your Theseus, your Hercules, all those ones there. And then only recently, he's just done a third one, which is the Trojan War. I haven't read this one yet, but it's got a wonderful rubbery cover to it there. Sometimes some really expensive cards come out. It's got that. So really recommend that one. And it's not too academic. It's just a nice, quick, easy, enjoyable read. So I recommend that if you do want to have a look at sort of getting to grips with the Greek myths a little bit more. Kristen says, I know embarrassingly little about Greek mythology. Kristen, don't worry, because I'm sure you make up with your knowledge of all the Norse and the runes and everything. So, I love how you That's the book I've read, says Isabel. Not read the others yet. Must get round to them. Yeah, really good books. I do recommend them. I like what Chris has just said. Joe, name me one tarot card that wouldn't be improved with a bottle of wine. Oh, Chris, you read it too. This Heroes and Troy sit beside. Oh, fantastic. It does have a wit in the retelling of it. Yeah, it's really light and they're all available on Amazon, so you can, or Kindle, so you can download them there. So there is I'm going to go quite fast to this because we've got a lot to get through tonight. He also has a very dark, brutal side of his personality, but maybe that come later. I think you're talking about Dionysus and not Stephen Fry, Beth. But yeah, there is that kind of slightly drunken, do I dare use the word orgiastic, something like that? I don't even know if that's a word to use. He's got that kind of slightly naughty. Certainly his followers were very up for getting drunk and doing all sorts of bits and pieces and having fun together. So yeah, there is that there as well. Right, I'm going to move on to the Magician. The Magician is a card that I really don't like with this one. It's Hermes. Yeah, it's very traditional. I don't like the fact that Hermes looks like he does. He looks a bit strange to me. So I'm not a fan of this Magician. However, and it wasn't until I went and looked at the cards the other day that I noticed this, that actually what I do like is the fact we're in the middle of a crossroads. And I never noticed that before, with the paths going off. And it's the same kind of background as was in the Fool. So it does feel like we are going on the Fool's journey here and we are meeting these characters. Hermes as a messenger of the gods and all the bits and pieces. Yes, we've got his staff, we've got but I struggle a little bit with him being the Magician. Yeah. Joe says there's a great book called Mythology that contains the well-known stories of Greek myths. It was like the Homeric hymns. These are stories, songs dedicated to the Greek. That sounds fascinating. I'll have to have a look at that. Hello, Tony. Welcome. He does look like he's disco dancing. But then I kind of got past that, and now we get onto the High Priestess. So this is Persephone, sometimes known as Proserpina, if you happen to be Roman. And this is really nice because, again, we've got the columns, we've got the pomegranate that would be in the High Priestess. If you don't know anything about her, Persephone was the daughter of Demeter, who was kidnapped by Hades, the god of the underworld, and forced to go and live with him and marry him underground in the halls of the dead. And because she was kidnapped, the gods, her mother, who was the corn goddess and the harvest goddess, got very, very sad, and all the crops died. So it was the Greeks' way of describing the seasonal change from spring, summer into autumn, winter. Basically what happened, Persephone, the gods were sent off. I think Hermes went off to bargain with Hades about returning Persephone back to the world so that nature could continue to grow again. And it was decided that she could come back as long as she hadn't eaten anything. And unfortunately, that very day, she'd eaten 6 seeds from a pomegranate, which means she has to spend 6 months of the year down with Hades in the dark and 6 months in the world with her mother. And again, describes how the seasons happen there. So I really like the nod to the High Priestess and the pomegranate seeds and the pomegranate curtain there. Yeah. So interesting that, as Beth says, it's interesting choice because, for me, the High Priestess is all about the head and the intuition and the brain and all that stuff. I possibly wouldn't tie Persephone in with that, but I can see what the representation's trying to do there. Hi, Jonathan. Welcome. Is Hecate? Yes, Hecate's in the deck. I think it's the moon card. she may well have done, Kristen, gone down into the underworld. But another nice thing about this is the next card is her mother. So the Empress is Demeter. And look at those gorgeous things. And this is very kind of RWS typical. Really stunning card. But what I like about this, if we go back and have a look at Persephone, can you see that it's the same scene in the background of the world with the mountains or the hills and the waterfall as actually is in the back of this card here. So I really like those links with these cards. I think it's about hidden things, yeah. Like Jonathan saying, hello, you handsome man. So again, really nice cards. And this card I like particularly. I think it would make a really nice greetings card. It's got really nice vibes to this. I particularly like this Empress card. The Emperor is Zeus, naturally. There he is with his eagle and his thunderbolts on top of Mount Olympus. And let's face it, there aren't going to any other Emperor card. Who would you pick? So there's Zeus, and of course, all these characters are going to probably pop up again and again and again when we look at the minor arcana. The Hierophant is a really good choice. I think this is fantastic. This is Chiron the Centaur. He was the tutor and teacher to many of the Greek heroes, Theseus, I believe, and Jason, and some of the Greek, I think Achilles as well, was tutored perhaps by a centaur. I like his hand with the sun rays coming out of it. So I really like the idea of the tradition, the tutor, the mentor that goes with this card there. Not particularly keen, particularly on the way it's drawn. There's quite a lot of black there. It's a bit unusual for the Hierophant, but still pretty cool. And then we come to the Lovers. Now, this is interesting. Again, I don't think the artwork is particularly wonderful on this one, or the viewpoint. We've got the Judgment of Paris, and basically Paris, the shepherd here, he's actually a Trojan prince, to be honest, but he's at this point in time, he's a shepherd. And he's been asked to judge between the three goddesses of Hera, Aphrodite, and Athena as to who is the most effective, the best goddess. I mean, that's a horrible choice. He's doomed before he's even start with that one there. And all three of them offer him gifts, and he has to go and choose. And he gives the apple to Aphrodite, and that's basically he gets to choose the love of his life, which later turns out to be Helena Troy and leads into the Trojan War. So although we don't obviously have embracing couples or we have this lovely element of choice, which is a huge meaning for the Lovers card in traditional terms. So, it's fantastic. We have this idea of having to choose and make decisions and perhaps looking and balancing up a situation, but we don't actually have the lovers per se. Now, I suppose we could think of them, well, Paris and when he gets Helena Troy will, yes, be lovers, but this card relies a lot more on choice than perhaps the traditional thoughts of lovers here. It is a perfect myth for that card, yeah. Oh, the troll. He chose the naked lady. There's a lot. Yeah, there's some Aphrodite for some reason always appears in his deck without very much on, whereas all the other goddesses are very well covered up. So it's quite an interesting take on that one there. And yeah, it looks quite childish, this picture, but that's one of the charms of the deck. Chariot is Aries on his war chariot. Hound, and there's a great essence of speed there with this one. Again, he's not the most attractive. When I think of Aries, the war god, I like to think of him as a bit more attractive than that, and not look like your next door neighbor, that kind of thing. And perhaps have a few more muscles on him. And I think that was probably one of the things about this deck. I kind of had in my head the idea of what Greek gods look like when you look at Greek statues and Greek sculpture. And I found that some of these images are quite mundane, but it grew on me over the time. So, and in the new Giovanni Caselli version, he has beefed up some of the people in there so that they look a bit more muscular toned as well. Does his armor have abs and a belly? Yes, it does. And do you know what they used to? Apparently, they used to do that. Put belly buttons on there and put abs on and pecs to. Yeah, I don't know why. Just I suppose to look more threatening if you're in battle. So justice, we have Athena and her owl, and she's the goddess of wisdom, as we know. So a very good choice there. And as we're going to see later on, she's going to come into one of the other stories and play the part of judge and in many ways executioner. Athena's a bit of a strange goddess in many ways because, yes, she does stand for justice here and she does stand for truth and everything. However, I think she's the same goddess that turned Medusa into a Gorgon because she got abused, unfortunately, poor soul. And so, yeah, it's sometimes a bit of a strange choice, but I can see why they've gone for the justice card there. There's my girl, says Ren, only I prefer Minerva. The floor is significant, yeah. The chessboard. I really like the way the columns have been drawn on this one, actually. It has got a real depth to it. Never heard of armor nipples, Chris. It's all the rage these days. Yeah. Athena's off my Christmas card list then as well. Temperance is a lovely card. So this is the goddess Iris, who was, and we've actually got irises there as well at the bottom. And she was the goddess of the rainbow, as well as many other things. And I really like that card. The only thing I would say is I don't know why she's got wings like that when none of the other goddesses do, but that's a choice. I was wondering why not that. That would have been a good choice, wouldn't it? Themis. But I think this is one of my favourite temperance cards I've ever seen, actually. It's really nice. You know, and I also think the way the water's pouring out there, you know, like sometimes if you spray something in the sunlight, you get that rainbow off there. I really get a gorgeous effect from there. So it's beautifully painted. Okay, so now we're obviously going Hercules, and he's strangling his lion there. It's his first task that he had to do. And Hercules, you know, he's got his muscles and everything like that, and he's very much as you would expect to be. It's in a cave, a bit like the Hierophant cave that we looked at. And he's broken his sword and he's put down his club, as in the myth, and then he just literally gets his brute strength involved and you know, strangles the lion eventually. And then later goes on to wear it as a trophy, as a cape, the skin of it. So this is obviously about brute strength. Nowadays, we tend to think of strength much more as inner strength in many ways. But then, you know, if you're designing a deck about Greek myths and you come to the strength card, there is only really one person, I suppose, you could use, and it has to be Hercules. Otherwise, there would be a bit of an outcry, wouldn't we? Yeah, it's one of his 12 trials. That's right. The Nemean lion, I think it was. Yeah. The Mythos book or Heroes book, Stephen Fry does a fantastic retelling of the Hercules myth. Yeah. But it's interesting that he had to use his arms and his strength that way rather than use tools and weapons to do it. And Beth says, I don't like strength cards that depict brutality or physical force. Yeah. It's very different from what we would assume, you know, when we're used to the lady with the lion in your traditional Pamela Coleman Smith deck. Could have David and Goliath too. Wisdom as well, though. Yep, it took Heracles a while to work out how to defeat them. It did. In fact, it took him a long time to work out every one of his tasks in the end, didn't he? Particularly with the Hydra, he kept lopping the head off to realise it kept growing more and more and more. So he had to think up a way of dealing with it. So yes, I like that take on it, Chris. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, David that's a Bible story, isn't it? Thing was huge and a beast, yeah. And actually, if you think if everyone's seen Disney Hercules, and they actually did quite a good job on that one there. Hercules is one of my favourite Disney films. I think Hades is one of my favourite Disney villains. So yeah. So we're coming to the Hermit, and this is Kronos. Now, Kronos is one of the older gods that when the Titans were fighting the gods before the Olympians, Kronos came along. And he's known for having his scythe. So let's not confuse him with the figure of death, even though he's got a crow on his shoulder and a scythe. He is the Hermit, and he carries a scythe because at one point let me get this right, I think he was castrated, or he castrated someone. I think he castrated his father, but don't quote me on that. I might be wrong. And he was castrated with a scythe because, ouch, why wouldn't you? That is why Kronos then went on to stand for time, and why we think of Old Father Time with a beard and with a scythe, because we get that it's Kronos, which of course is where we get the word chronometer, which means time, and things like that. Interesting choice for the Hermit, really. I don't really, I have to say, this is the card that probably sits the hardest with me, because I can't see in any of the Greek myths, he was actually a bit of a baddie, why he would represent the Hermit, and what I believe the Hermit is. So yeah, I don't particularly like this one. Yeah, it's Kronos. So Kronos, it's sometimes spelt with a K. Yeah, that's who it is. Oh, yeah, there we go. He chopped off Uranus's dangly bits. Thanks, Chris. But from the yes, when he chopped off his dangly bits, let's put it that way, he then kind of threw them around, didn't he, a bit? And from the sea, that's where some of the sperm from his dangly bits, when it mixed with the sea, and I think Aphrodite might have come out of it. One of them did, and where the blood fell, other gods grew from it. So if he hadn't been castrated, then there wouldn't have been the other gods of Olympus there. So that's why he cut some of the dangly bits off. That's impolite. Yeah, so let's move on. This one's fantastic, though. So we've got the Wheel of Fortune, again in a cave, very much like the backgrounds that we've seen here. And so we have Clotho. I'll have to write this one down. Clotho, I can't read my writing, Lachius and Atropos, who were the three Morai. And they were sisters, I believe. And the Spinners of Time, this is quite a common element that appears in the Wheel of Fortune, but you can see that they've got the person who holds the flax, the person that pulls out the length of somebody's life force represented in the string or the wool, and then somebody who cuts it to represent the end of someone's life. And you can see these three people sitting on the wheel. Sorry, there's four people, aren't there, going round. But I really like that. I think it's really nicely shown, and we kind of almost have a mother maiden crone element to this as well. Yeah, Zeus was the one that ate his children, and then he had to have his head cut open. I think Athena popped out of it. Chris is in his element. She was barely at home from a shift at the pub, and Uranus wanted to get his head off. I like this card. Hangman, Prometheus. Prometheus is the one that kind of betrayed the gods by making humans and bringing them fire to keep them warm. And his story here is that he, for his punishment, gets chained to a rock. I'm not sure whether it's upside down or not, but he gets chained to a rock. And every day this eagle swoops in and eats his liver. But because he's a god, he heals and restores himself every day for it all to happen again the next day. So he's in perpetual pain here. So I quite like this idea of the hangman. It's often the image as well that's used that transfers across to Odin as well. that idea of the sacrifice there. And particularly here, it's almost Christ-like in the way that it's been portrayed. I mean, if we put it around that way. So, you know, a very strong image there. And again, this wasteland in the background, and the idea of suffering perhaps for the better self, your better self, or the by taking yourself out of the equation, by distancing yourself, contemplating what's happening, you know. And as I said, that idea of personal sacrifice for the good is really important in this card. Oh, there's a lot of jokes going on. I love it. I'm not mature enough for you people, says friend. Right, sugar water. Yeah, that was Prometheus. So next one is death. So this is Hades. And again, we've got the Narcissus there, which is what Persephone was holding earlier on. I love this image, actually. It's the camera's not picking out, but you've got lots of shades of black and grey going on. And the background, again, similar to the Empress, which is interesting because on this side, we've got the decayed, dying earth, if you like, the part where Persephone returns to the underworld and the spirits died. And then the other side of the river Styx, which is the river of death. You've got the lush countryside, like that was the Empress card had. Yeah, the Styx. I quite like the fact he's got his helmet on there and you don't get to see his face. I think it's much more provoking, isn't it? I'm not quite sure why these three people are here, apart from the representation of the like they are in the Rider-Waite-Smith. Up next is Pan of the Devil. And again, it's really easy to see why I have Pan here for this one here, and the chained people here. And he is a naughty trickster. And yes, he would lure people off, and he was definitely known for his addictions and his sexual prowess there. So yeah, again, a very good example of using the Devil card there really nicely, and it ties in together with our other understanding of it. I also quite like the fact he's got his panpipes out. So not only is you got these two people on a chain, they look like they're dancing. They don't quite, I don't know, are they running away from him or are they dancing for him? Because if they are dancing for him, that puts a really new spin on it. In fact, he looks like he's dancing a bit, doesn't he? He is quite heavy. I don't think he's probably buffer than Hercules by the look of it there, the original one. But again, I like this kind of cave-like cavern that's going on there. And then we have the tower. So here is Poseidon with his trident, and he is attacking this island. Now, I did have to look this one up because the island he's attacking is apparently the labyrinth that the Minotaur would live in. So the Minos palace and the labyrinth there. And we're going to come up against him a bit more. But again, I really like the sea waves and crashing around him here, and that the, you know, lightning is coming out of his trident here. He was known as the incoming. Basil wants to play, everyone, so we might see a tale in a moment. So yeah, he was known for not only being the god of the sea, but of lightning and other storms and catastrophes like that as well. So yeah. What the hell is that here? Teeth floating. The thunder god, yes. Oh, I recently found out, Sir Jonathan, that Pan is a god of winter and snow. Oh, really? Yeah, it's a pan pipe, yeah. Is it easy to make out on the new method? Yeah, I could probably imagine it. It's Basil, are you going to stay with me? Sorry, everyone. He's going to just wants to play. He doesn't normally do this. Don't knock. Oh. Right, you might need to go. Come on. Oh. You can sit there if you want to. Right. Did you go and see King Minos' palace in Crete? I've never been there. I'm just going to get the cat out of the way. Do excuse me just a second. So you go there. I know you wanted to play with the nice cards. I know. Sorry about that. It was Kitty Cam then for a moment. It's giving me a filthy look. It's nice you wanted to join in though, isn't it? Okay, where are we? The stars. So this is a beautiful card. This is again one of my favorites. This is Pandora, and the box that she opens. She's told not to, but she decides she wants to know what's inside, and all the bad things, all the troubles of the world that are kept in there all fly out and escape. And then the last thing sitting at the bottom of the box that flies out is hope. And for me, the star card, if you could sum it up one word, it is hope. So I think that's, again, a fantastic image, fantastic myth to tie it in. It works really well. Floofy intermission, yeah. He's never done that before. Here we go. Here's the moon goddess. I love that. The moon actually looks really, I'm trying to get it to focus if it can. It looks very similar to the Rider-Waite-Smith moon there, actually. And the three-headed dog. Is that Cerberus? I can never remember. But that's great. And Apollo is the sun. Again, it's the same kind of pillars here. And he, obviously, Apollo was the rider of the sun chariot. So he was, his job to, along with many other things, is to ride the chariot of the sun across the sky every day, including all the other things he had to do. Which is interesting because his sister Demeter was not Demeter. Oh, I've forgotten the name. Artemis is also supposed to be the moon goddess. So I'm surprised that Artemis isn't on that one. But I'm sure she'll pop up in a minute. Then we're at Judgment. Now, this is a bit of a weird one because we are back in the underworld again. And there's that the same steps, the same pillars that Persephone was walking down. There's the same thing there. Now, Hermes is in the same outfit. He looks very different to what he did as the magician. Yes, now the problem that we have here is that the Greeks didn't have the same understanding of resurrection that the Judgment card is portraying, particularly here. The Greeks did not wrap their dead bodies up as mummies. They didn't believe in resurrection coming back. You went off to your different part of Hades, whether that was a pleasure palace or Tartarus or whatever. But there was no way you were going to be coming back. You were there for the longevity of it all. So this card for me, as somebody that kind of goes with that story, doesn't sit quite comfortably. And I'm really not quite sure why Hermes has been used for this one. It feels like it's been done. It's been shoehorned in, this one. So I quite like the artwork. I like the references to the other one there. Yeah, Artemis is the goddess of the hunt as well. It's she was Apollo's twin sister. He's taken a vacation to Egypt. Also, as well, they look a bit, I don't know, look a bit weird, don't they? Those mummies. Okay, and this is another one I'm not I think it's really badly drawn, actually. But this is Hermaphroditus, who was the offspring of Hermes and Aphrodite. Yeah, and it's traditional RWS. I just find that's a little bit uninspiring, a little bit unexciting for the world card, I have to be honest. The blue sky and the clouds are beautiful. Just doesn't do very much for me. They look like kids wrapped up in toilet paper. Artemis was also goddess of animals and plants and childbirth. That's why I think she would have been the empress. I see. Yeah, that's a good point, Beth. And Chris says Hermes was the magician of the gods, and he was one of the few capable of going down into the underworld. I suppose so. Yeah, it's Hermes that comes down and brings Persephone back here. Yeah, they do. They have lots of different jobs to do. They're very busy, the Greek gods, weren't they? So there we go. That's the majors. Enjoyed looking at that, and thank you for allowing me to talk you through those ones. I'm going to have a drink of water. Let's just remember what I look like. There's some lovely comments, everyone. Thank you. It's really nice going back to this deck. Okay, let's go through the majors and just check on time. I'm going to whiz through these quite quickly. Now, the majors are... This is where it got a little bit strange for me, because when you think of a Greek tarot, Greek myth tarot, there are so many wonderful Greek stories that you could pick. Okay. And so when I first saw the stories or the legends that the minor arcana show, I was really disappointed. You know, we could have had Theseus and the Minotaur. We could have had the Gorgons, Perseus and the Gorgons. You know, we do have Jason and the Argonauts and the Golden Fleece. But the rest of them are myths and legends that people may not know too well. They are actually, in hindsight, a perfect fit for the different suits. However, they just seem a bit strange. So I'm going to show you what I mean by this. We're going to start with the swords, and the ace of each suit starts with the god or the goddess who features highly in the story that is told throughout the minor arcana. So the ace of swords is going to be Athena, and we'll talk about her in a moment. I'm just going to lay them down so that you can see them. So this is going to be not the Trojan War. This is the aftermath of the Trojan War. So we are going to have the story here of Agamemnon, the Greek king, and his wife Clytemnestra, and their son Orestes. Okay, this is a story that's told quite a lot, and they loved it for Greek drama and Greek theatre. It's called the Oresteia. And basically what happens in here is Clytemnestra and her lover Aegisthus murder Agamemnon in the bath when he comes back from the Trojan Wars. He's been away for 10 years, so it's not just happening, planned over a few weeks, this one. So you can see the sky is beautifully dark here. And then we kind of go on a journey with Orestes, the son, because Orestes now has to kill his mother because of her killing his father. So he's out for revenge for his father's death. Okay. Now, firstly, he is advised and guided by Apollo, the sun god. Okay. So again, we've got some really nice ties going on with the RWS system. We've got the relaxation, the restful period. I'm not going to suggest that Orestes right now is in a restful state, but we have the Four of Swords being, quite restful. We have the three here as piercing the heart. We've got the power of the Five of Swords of Apollo dictating perhaps the path that he has to take. Orestes then continues to journey. I have absolutely no idea why Orestes is doing this and why he is represented, if he is in fact represented as the Seven of Swords. I would have to look in the book for that one. But basically, he does kill his mother, and then he gets set upon by the Furies, who here are kind of Gorgon-esque women. They are the things of nightmares that will pursue him and follow him around for the rest of his life because he killed his mother. Hi, Regina. Hello to you. And then in the Nine of Swords, we can see that they are just following him. They're in his head. He can't get away from them. So yeah, again, it follows the RWS meanings really, really well. However, they are not the most inspiring of stories, I really think, for this one. When you think of swords, you think of all the great stuff. We could have had possibly another bit of the Trojan War. Might have been a little bit a little bit more exciting. And I'm saying this as a 19-year-old buying this deck. I'm not saying it now as a 50-year-old who absolutely gets why Juliet Scharnberg decided to use this part of the mythology to tell the swords story. The Ten of Swords is finally the judgment. We said earlier about Athena being a justice and justice and fair person. Here she steps in and sorts out the situation between the Furies and Orestes. And actually Orestes is then freed of the troubles that he's been through. Okay, everyone away with that one. Then we have different characters to represent the four courts. Now, these people are not linked at all, really, to the story that we've just been through. However, what they do is have that element of air, of fight, of information that the swords represent. So the Page of Swords is actually Zephyrus, who is one of the winds. I can't remember if he's the east wind or the west wind. So we have that element of air coming in with the Page of Swords there. The Knight of Swords is actually represented as two. I'm just going to turn it over because I can't remember. Castor and Pollux, they're the twins. So if you know, and Gemini, star sign, the twins there, they are there. Okay. These pictures, I have to say, I feel quite badly drawn, and they're so much better on the Caselli ones, I think. But I quite like the fact that the twins here are both on the same horse there, powering through the sky. Here we have Atalanta, who was a follower of Artemis and was, I think she was something to do, she wasn't a goddess, but I think she was a friend or something to do with Artemis. I don't actually know too much about her story, to be honest with you. But the king is Odysseus, and Odysseus is the mastermind behind the Trojan horse, the one that's the wily, cunning, clever thinker. Okay, so perfect person for the King of Swords, and that quick-witted, quick thinking, very imaginative, a person that can lead and inspire and get people to do stuff that may seem crazy. He invented the Trojan horse and said, this is the way out after 10 years. This is how we're going to solve the problem. We're going to hide in a wooden horse, and this is my plan. So, again, it's all to do with the mental stimulation and the power of persuasion there. Absolutely, Beth. I love the way the suit follows one myth. Yeah, 8 through to 10. So we're going with the wands now. So this is, as we recognize, the purple. This is Zeus. And a big hint as to what this one's about. We've got the golden fleece. So we're going to talk about the Jason and the golden fleece myth here. And here he is. And again, this ties in that there's the centaur Chiron, who was the Hierophant. He's even in the same pose. He's still got the scroll in his hand. He's in the cave. So I really like the way, again, that links back and harks back to that one. And here Jason is just setting out on his voyage. You'll notice he's got two sandals on, but it quite makes a big thing about it in here. Because in the story, he loses one of his sandals, and the king who's going to go and visit, I think it's his uncle or relative at least, is warned that the person that will kill you will be wearing only one sandal. And so it's quite important that we see Jason's sandals here, because later on, part of the mythology, part of the story of how the quest for the golden fleece went, it's going to rely on that one. Here he is, and you can see he's actually lost one of his sandals. He's not tied up there. And here's the king, and the king's saying, okay, before you attack me and everything that goes on there, I'm going to send you on a quest to go and retrieve the golden fleece. So here he is setting off. We've got Orpheus, And we've got a few other characters who're going to appear later on as some of the court cards. There's the Discourse, Castor and Pollux that we saw earlier, and Hercules as well. And they're going to set sail on the Argo ship. At this point, I just think of that wonderful film from the 60s, Jason and the Argonauts. It's a real favourite of mine. Oh, yeah, look, Joe saying, I love the old film there. Didn't see your comment when I said that one there. So here's Jason, and he's now met up with the king's daughter, Medea, who's practices witchcraft, and she manages to bewitch, enchant the dragon or the serpent that guards the golden fleece. So without her, Jason doesn't stand a chance. So here they are as the Five of Wands in combat, up against it, trying to get their prize. The Six of Wands is the victorious stance. Again, fantastic choice there of victory. And the Seven of Wands then comes about with the arguments and what goes on amongst the Argonauts in a way to escape. And unfortunately for Jason, after this, it turns out to be a bit of a rubbish ending, because he does make his escape. He escapes the kingdom with Medea, the woman that helped him. So the Eight of Wands, they're swiftly going across the sea. And then they're going to the clashing rocks. Now, these rocks were enchanted and wouldn't let any ships pass them, and they would move together and crush the ships and sink them. So there they are. And in the myth, he sends a dove off to get through the rocks, and he does eventually get through the rocks safely. So there he is. But this is where it's a sad ending, because it all goes badly wrong for Jason. He dumps Medea, and he's kind of forgotten about, the ship gets rotten and falls to bits, and the golden fleece, is a myth and a story, but he just dies a bit of a sad old man on his own at the end. And here he's actually just surrounded, just like he's on a bonfire. So it's not a very happy ending for the Ten of Wands. But again, a perfect sort of idea behind it all, the idea of the stress, the job being done, the completion of a job, and what have you got out of it? So let's look at the court cards. For the Wands, we have, I think his name's Phrixus. He was the child that was rescued by one of the gods, maybe Zeus, I don't know, on a golden ram. So he escaped with his sister on the back of this ram. The sister unfortunately fell off and drowned in the sea, but he carried on safely. And to give thanks for his safe passage, he actually sacrificed the ram to the gods and gave the golden fleece to the king, which is what started the story off. Knight of Wands, we have Bellerophon, and he's off to kill the Chimera, which is this rather strange-looking monster here. As far as monsters go, I don't know about you, but I think it looks quite sweet and cuddly. It's got a lion's head and a deer's head, and it's got an arrow stick. I mean, it's supposed to be a hideous, fire-breathing, dangerous animal, but it looks quite cute, I think, that one there. Anyway, there's a hero. There's Bellerophon. He's off on Pegasus. Fantastic. I love the way the wind's blowing through the wands here. The Queen of Wands is Penelope, who is the wife of Odysseus, that we saw as the King of Swords. She is a very patient lady. She waited 20 years for her husband to return. So, yeah, I quite like the fact that she's she's always supported. She never went and remarried. She stood behind her belief in her husband the whole time there. And the King of Wands is Theseus. And you can just see behind is Athens, his city. I really like that. And I think actually the court cards are really beautifully drawn compared to some of the other ones there. Beth says Medusa was villainized unfairly. don't you think? Absolutely. I've read some really good books retelling the story there, Beth, of Medusa. I recommend one's called Pandora's Jar, and it's retelling or telling the story of a lot of Greek women in mythology and telling their story from a different point of view. You might want to look that up. Medusa wasn't supposed to boast so much. I never really been drawn to other women from the Greek myths other than Medusa. Oh. It'd be nice if there were more books out there like Circe, Madeline and Mila. Yeah, that's a brilliant story. I've read that twice now. Try this Pandora's Box, and I think there are more books coming out as well. I'll try and remember. There was a book, a short story I read about Medusa as well recently. If you search Madeline Miller's Circe on Kindle, you'll get some suggestions coming up. And I think there's another book called The Silent Women, which is the story of the Trojan women, which is really good as well, if I recommend that. Thanks, Richie. Okay. Jonathan says, with the amount of peacocks that live around me, I'm very conscious of Hera being nearby. Yeah. I'm very suspicious about peacock feathers. I won't have them in the house. I was always brought up never to have peacock feathers. Yeah, Pandora's Jar. Yeah. Percy Jackson books are brilliant. You're quite right. I love them. I wish the Percy Jackson books were around when I was a kid. I would have, I would just keep reading them and reading them. And I think the film's pretty good too. Okay, well, we're doing just over the hour. Let's do 2 more to go. Just looking on Amazon. Excellent. I've only read the first 2 Percy Jackson books. I must try and get around to reading the other ones. Right, Ace of Cups. So there she is again, Aphrodite, with a massive cup this time. And there's no getting away from it. That's based on the famous birth of Aphrodite, isn't it, picture? And she's naked again. And here again, there are many, many stories in Greek mythology about love. But again, they've gone for a slightly different take on this one here. Let's get my paper reorganized. The cat's knocked it over. Because this is the story of Eros and Psyche. And Psyche, unfortunately, as many Greek maidens seem to do in the mythology, was destined to be sacrificed to the gods to provide food and everything for the families of the kingdom that were going. And as she was being sacrificed, Psyche, Eros, who is the son of Aphrodite, think of him a little bit like Cupid, if you want to, but just a bit more butcher, was flying past. With his loincloth undone. Anyway, he falls in love with Psyche. And if you notice, Psyche hasn't seen him yet. The whole part of the story is that Psyche is rescued by Eros, who falls in love with her, but she never looks at him. She is never allowed to look at him. And so what happens is she is whisked off to his fabulous palace, where she spends many happy times and many happy nights with him. But remember, she's never allowed to look at him. And so the 4 of Cups comes along, and here she's allowed to have her sisters come and join her. And her sisters want to know what's happened to her, that she lives in this fantastic palace with this person that she doesn't know. And they are suggesting, whispering in our ear, why don't you go and look at him? Perhaps he's a monster. Perhaps he's hideously ugly. How do you know he's not going to kill you or something like that? And so they're putting the seeds of doubt into her mind. So she takes their advice, and at night when he's asleep, she breaks into his room with a lamp and looks at him and sees that he's a fabulously attractive, wonderful Greek man with wings. But unfortunately, in doing so, she wakes him up. And he realizes that he's been betrayed. And so she goes very remorsefully, kicked out the palace, driven out, where his mother, Aphrodite, then decides to set her some tasks in penance for what she's done. If you ever hear the Cinderella story, like when she has to sort the peas and the lentils out, it's very much based on that story, if you know what I'm talking about there from European fairy stories. So she has a couple of tasks to do, and she is sent away very remorseful. But eventually she passes them, and the two are left to be with one another, and they actually marry. And for once in a Greek myth, it's a happy ever after. And she actually becomes a demi-goddess. So she's got her wings there so that she can live forever with her husband. So it's a really nice story, actually. I quite like that one. And one that's not often told very often. A one-sided loincloth, I've sure seen them at Pride. Yeah. Yeah. Helicopter mum. Okay, so this time the court cards are about love and the different forms of love. So the Page of Cups is Narcissus, who is, well, as the name suggests, narcissistic, and to do with the narcissus flowers that currently are out and bloom in my garden. He falls in love with himself. So there's self-love to a point. Then we have Perseus. I don't really know what Perseus is doing on this card for love, but I suppose he loved Andromeda. It's a bit of a shame that she's not shown here, but we do have the fish and some rather nice Greek countryside. Then we come on to Helen of Troy. So that was the lady we were talking about, another kind of love, an infatuation, a love that caused a war and all the rest of the Greek myths to come around there. And I really like this Queen of Cups. And finally, we have Orpheus with his harp, his lyre. And of course, he was, when it comes to being the king of love, the king of cups, he's the one that when he lost his love, went all the way down into the underworld to find her and bring her back. And he bargained with Hades to bring her back, Eurydice. And on the understanding that on the way up to the surface, he did not turn around and look at her. And he got practically right the way there, but at the last moment, he wondered if being underground in the underworld had spoilt her complexion. So he turned around and had a look at her, and she disappeared off. So the things we do for love and what love makes us do, represented there by the King of Cups. Very romantic. Yeah. And then messed it all up. Well, that is one of the things about the Greek myths, actually. I mean, it's very rare they ever end happily ever after. So, as far as stories about telling you what life generally may be like, I suppose you can say that they got their ups and downs there on that one. Okay, last one coming up, the Pentacles. So here we've got Poseidon again, and lots of lovely grapes and bounteous lads. Now, this is an odd one because I can cope with the Oresteia, I can cope with Jason and the Golden Fleece, I can cope with Eros and Psyche. What I can't cope with is Daedalus. Daedalus is the inventor of the Labyrinth, which is the story that's going on here, and yet it's not. Okay, so when we think about the Minotaur and the Labyrinth, I'm always thinking, great picture. We don't get to see the Minotaur. We get to see a lot of the same kind of backgrounds, and this is quite hard. Particularly, remember, I didn't have the book at the time. It's the story of Daedalus as the inventor, being paid for his work. Beautiful backgrounds. I really like all the grapes and the vines and everything there. But you can see they're all very samey. So I do find this suit really disappointing when it comes to it. He then turns his back. I don't know the myth particularly well, but then he goes to King Minos. I like the backgrounds for the Minoan Palace. And actually, those are taken off actual frescoes that are there still. And pleads basically and agrees to build the labyrinth. And so he's getting the ideas. There's the queen with the bull, which is going to spark the creation of the Minotaur. But again, we don't see the Minotaur. We go back to him being in his fields with his grapevines. And hopefully you can see what I mean by this. They're lovely pictures, but it's really disappointing as far for me as the pentacle suit goes. We don't even have Icarus flying near the sun. I've got nothing here on this one. So yeah, the pentacle suit's my least favourite of them all. Beautifully drawn, but I don't get very much out of this one, and I find it quite confusing. And it's quite good to just go back to look at the RWS meanings behind them. However, the court cards shed a little bit more light on it. So this is about resources and nature and everything you get from the land bounty. So this is apparently, I had to look this one up, Triptolemus, who was a demigod of wheat and grain. So he's in the fields there with his seedlings. Now, this is a useful one. This is Aristaeus, who was another god, and he's the god of beekeeping and cheese making and sheep husbandry and all those kind of nice country crafts things. So you've actually got some beehives there going on. So, but without knowing that, you probably wouldn't get that from that picture there. Okay. So yeah, the god of herding and beekeeping and stuff like that. Then we have Omphale, who was, she's not the wife of Hercules, but she later went on to be a love interest of Hercules. She was the queen of a place called Lydia. Got some cows in the background. And finally, and I really like this one, this is King Midas. And as we know, he's the king with the golden touch. That's all the gold he's made at the bottom there. And I like this because obviously we know what happened in the story of the golden touch. What he thought was a fantastic gift turned out to be a hideous nightmare for him because he couldn't eat, he couldn't drink, and he accidentally touched his family and turned them all into gold statues. So, it's again the idea of having wealth, having resources, making it, but making sure that what you've created and what you rule over is enough to keep you satisfied, but not enough to conjure up greed or bring on any more of those other vices that may be there. So I like the fact that King Midas is the King of Pentacles there, and actually shown in quite a very nice way. He's just, holding up a pentacle with his servants in the background. We don't see some of the disaster that happened to poor King Midas there. So there we go. So that's that one then. Okay, what are we talking? Let's go back to me. Let's have a little look at the chats. Oh, romantic. Aha, that's a very good point, says Ren. Okay, so Beth says, Greek myths expose human frailties, which gods and goddesses share. Absolutely, yeah. It's very important that their gods are not perfect by any means, and actually quite antagonistic and quite difficult. Interesting because they're not ideal to good behavior as religious figures often are. Absolutely. Yeah, I see. It's interesting about the builder, not the monster. Yeah. The Minotaur was Asterion. He is the star, and the labyrinth that contains him is the circle star within the circle of the pentacle. Lovely. Thank you. Now for reading, I found that the stories mucked up the works. Some of them are really difficult. I have to say, I used to really dread having one of the pentacles because it was very much hard work. The rest of it all made sense. Ren says, it was better for me not to really consider the stories when reading the cards. Yeah. I like that. An older Midas after the fiasco. I like that word, fiasco. You're not typing way too much. I'm loving the fact that you're joining in. It's brilliant. It's been really great. Okay, so that's not bad. An hour and 20 minutes on this one. So there we go. That's my trip through memory lane. One thing I got out of this is I hadn't picked this deck up for the best part of 15 years. It's sat at the bottom of a drawer. Bearing in mind, I used it pretty much every day when I was at university. It was my go-to deck. It was, as I said at the beginning, the deck that I used for lots of reading for lots of people. It then just sat there. It sat there. To go back and review it, to go back and look at it again in a fresh pair of eyes and with time, a period of time after it, has been amazing. And I would really recommend anyone that's got a deck that they haven't picked up for a long time just to go back and sit with it for a little while, just to try and put in those thoughts, those ideas, those memories with it, just to hold on for it as a piece of, because when I look at different cards, for example, that one, I think of a friend that I did a reading for 32 years ago, and I can still remember, you know, where I was sitting, what the message was, what the reading was about. Yeah, to say 32 odd years ago, whereas I can't remember what I did this morning on most occasions. So it's interesting how these, you know, a reputable deck, a deck that you've used when you were younger and perhaps put aside, those memories are still locked in it. And I'm going to practice doing some readings with this one now that I've kind of refound it. And for me, it just makes a bit more contentment than perhaps buying a new deck. Let's go back and check them out and practice a little bit more with the decks that we've got. Thanks. Let's have a little look. So I'm just going to wrap things up here. So you're very welcome, Joe. It's been lovely having you here. Thank you, Jonathan. It's great to see you. I hope you're well. You don't have this deck. Well, as I said at the beginning, I don't know if you saw, there is a modern version of it available. And the modern version is just as lovely and is nicer in many ways. It's just, this is a bit older and a bit more historic. Absolutely memories. Beth says, the deck makes me want to read myths again, but doesn't tempt me as a deck. That's perfect. And even if you follow a pantheon, I don't see any reasons why you just couldn't have these cards out, not to do readings with, but you might just want to do some meditations or some readings, or perhaps use them to do something creative with. That'd be absolutely perfect. Hello, Calla. Have you looked at the new version of this deck? What do you think of it? I don't have it. I do like the artwork on there. However, having been a first edition, but the old edition boy, it felt like I was cheating going back on it. However, it's a really lovely deck, and I would really recommend it for, people, whatever stage of their tarot life they're on. The artwork is better. I think it's more reader friendly than new Mythic Tarot. However, this has just got a naive charm. No, I sound like something from the Rocky Horror, but it's got a naive charm about it. It's got a really interesting energy, a really simple energy, actually, I find, which is very different from the Mythic one, the new Mythic one. So, yeah, that's the only thing I can say. I haven't read, so I don't have a copy of the new one, and I haven't read with it. But the new images that I have seen, they've done a fantastic job at redrawing them and staying really, really particular to the style and the colours and the positions. It's just they look a bit more natural and less childlike in there. So I do like it, Hala. Hope that helps. You're very welcome. Thank you, everyone. That's so true. I took out my hoodies this morning and memories came flooding back to me as soon as I held it. Oh, hoodies. Well, that's interesting. And that's what this is about. I think it's really important to, well, as you know, I'm trying not to buy too much new stuff, just for various reasons. And it just, reinforced to me that the fact that this has been sitting there, which is something that I love and got memories attached to it, and I haven't used, made me a bit sad, And looking at it, I would much rather use this than perhaps something new like the Runic Tarot I bought, which is the Greek, the Norse one there. Lovely deck. I haven't picked it up. I haven't used it. I'd much rather go back and use that one. So that's the way forward. I'm going on that one then. Yeah, that's right. It is Kelly from Truth in Story. Done a good side by side. Simon's done one as well, I think, as well. Beth says, I have the Ancient Feminine Wisdom deck for meditation intentions. It's a goddess deck, mostly Greek. It's interesting. I mean, this was out in 99. There are more Greek decks out, but not a lot. I mean, there's quite a few oracle decks out for Greek mythology. But I can't think of another one that is so based on Greek mythology as a tarot deck, apart from the new Mythic Tarot. If anyone else can think of one, I'm overlooking it, but there's not one that I'm aware of. You're very welcome. Ooh, Beth, I'll look out for that deck. Oh, is it out of print? Oh, I don't know that one. I'm going to have to. Is it Hoods? Hoods. I don't know how to pronounce that one, Matt. The Orphic Tarot. Oh, thanks, Chris. I don't know that one. Or have I've heard of it. I can't think what it looks like. I'll have to go. Oh, I meant the Ancient Feminine. Okay, folks. Thank you very much for joining me. I hope that was okay. I know there's a lot of me talking, but then what else am I going to do it live? I'm not going to sit here and not talk, am I? Next Friday, I'll be back. I have not got an idea at all what I'm going to do next Friday. If anyone wants to come on and join me for a chat, let me know. Get me through the Facebook page or Instagram account, Longman Tarot. If you fancy popping on for a chat, I've got nothing planned. Following week, Chris Butler's coming back. Yay! For part 2. So that's the plan. That's the, whatever it is, or 10th, is it? 10th or something like that? Yeah. So Chris Butler we had such a fantastic time last week, is coming on for part 2. We're talking about Lenormand. We are talking about old decks, decks from our youths. We've got decks that are very, very similar. So I'm really looking forward to that. And then the following week after that, we're into the Ostara Longstash. That's gone quick, hasn't it? So that's the plan. Oh, it was kickstarted last year. Okay. Lovely chatting to everyone. You're very welcome, everyone. And thank you for joining me. It's been really good. Have a great Friday. What's left of it. Have a great weekend. And I'll see you next Friday. And